Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. I live in a small country where things still go bump in the night. That doesn't just apply to creepy local legends, dark strangers, cartels, or the mafia. Nowhere is truly removed from the day-to-day dangers of the unknown. It was a dark night, and I found myself home alone. Where I live, it's not uncommon for the entire family to live together, grandparents, parents, children, grandchildren, all sharing the same place, building wealth and security on a single piece of property. It's the simplest way to live, really. As you can imagine, being home alone in such a situation is a real rarity. With so many people under one roof, it's almost impossible to time things just right to get some privacy, let alone be entirely alone. I did what I always did when I had the house to myself. I hooked up the surround sound in the living room, turned off all the lights, bundled up on the couch with my favorite snack, and watched whatever I wanted on the big family television. Despite the ever-present dangers I mentioned earlier, I remember that evening being very relaxing. The gentle rain and breeze along the coast created a soothing pitter-patter against the roof. As the night went on, I thought I heard someone at the front door, so I moved to investigate. The noise stopped immediately. It was a stormy night, and with the sound turned up so loud, I convinced myself I might have heard something that wasn't there. I went back to the movie and tried to relax again. That's when the back door began to rattle. I adjusted myself on the sofa to get a better look, and then someone started knocking, frantic, heavy banging against the hardwood. I froze in place. At first, I tried to dismiss it as storm sounds or junk blowing around in the backyard, but it quickly became undeniable. Someone was trying to come inside the house. Everyone in the family had a key, so whoever was at the door clearly didn't belong. At the time, I was an 18-year-old man, running through logical scenarios in my head. Whoever it was must have tried the front door, then slipped around the house to force the back door open. I reasoned it was probably not the cartel, mafia, or a monster. Anyone with real bloodlust would have forced the front door. It was likely a common thief, someone nervous and trying to stay unseen. Being 18, I decided I could take them head-on and show the world this guy had picked the wrong house. I moved to the kitchen and grabbed the biggest cleaver the first could find, 10 inches of dingy, ugly steel. The door handle continued twisting and the door jimmied fiercely. I had no idea what was going to happen, but I readied myself for whatever came next. There's nothing quite like the mentality of a teenager, huh? Hey! You don't know who you're messing with. I shouted through the door. The stranger stopped shaking the handle for a moment. I know you're out there. You have 3 seconds to get out of here, or I'll chop you up. They didn't care. The knocking resumed, harder than before. My confidence quickly faded. I took a deep breath and hoisted the cleaver over my head. It was do or die. I unfastened the lock and threw open the door, only to find that whoever had been outside was already gone. I looked around but couldn't find any trace of anyone or where they might have gone. I went back to the couch and tried to relax until everyone else got home. Needless to say, I had a hard time relaxing the rest of the night, even though nothing else happened. I played softball throughout high school, which meant I got home an hour or two later than school let out. Regardless, I would still be the first one home more often than not. My parents worked well into the afternoon, and my sister participated in various clubs and after-school events like theater. One day, I came home to the usual scene, a locked-up house, lights off, and a note from my mom in the kitchen. I let the dog out into the backyard, changed out of my uniform, and cracked open a bag of Cheetos. It was a very average, typical day. My dog scratched at the door to let me know he was bored and wanted to come back inside. I let him in, cuddled up on the couch with him, and we started watching our favorite shows. That's when, out of nowhere, I heard a door slam open. The sound came from somewhere beneath me, downstairs in the basement. I could feel it vibrating through the floorboards. I know this sounds weird, but it wasn't out of the ordinary. The basement was like a downstairs apartment of sorts, and my older sister lived down there. The basement had its own entry door to the outside, and she could be pretty careless about coming and going. My parents had spoken to her several times about letting the door slam open and shut. Because of that, I didn't think twice about the noise. I kept watching TV and eating my Cheetos. My dog, however, got up and moseyed down the stairs. This wasn't that odd. What was odd was the silence that followed. No smooching, petting, or excited cheers, just deathly quiet after he went downstairs. I kept watching TV, thinking maybe my sister was in a bad mood. A few minutes later, I noticed movement in the front yard. I turned to see my dog, the same one that had been on the couch with me, running up and down the block by himself. He's a big, dumb, overly friendly Labrador who was not allowed out front. My sister definitely knew this. I thought to myself, what is going on here? What is my sister doing? I got off the couch and went down to the basement stairwell. All the lights were off, and it was eerily quiet. I was starting to notice things that felt out of place. Peculiar details I should have caught earlier were beginning to stand out in my mind. As I reached the basement landing, I saw the outside door was wide open. Mud was tracked inside for a few steps, and a boot print was squarely planted in the center of the door. Near as I could tell, somebody had kicked in the ground-level door. For whatever reason, when they saw my sister wasn't there, they left immediately. They didn't take anything. They didn't move anything. This wasn't a robbery. Fear and murder were the only things I could think of, and my thoughts got worse from there. Whoever it was went back out the way they came and left the door wide open, letting my dog escape. I told everyone what had happened when they got home. We searched the house and property, but nothing turned up. A few weeks later, my parents installed a security system, and that's the only reason my sister and I ever felt safe in that house again. It was about a year ago when my parents and sister went out of state for a sports tournament. I was left alone in the house for 3 days. I had never been home by myself for that long before, and I thought it would be nice to have some peace and quiet. The first night went by without anything out of the ordinary happening. I watched a couple of movies, made some popcorn, and went to bed around midnight. I didn't think much of it when I woke up in the middle of the night with a vague, uneasy feeling. It wasn't anything specific, just the weird sense that someone was watching me or something. I shrugged it off and went back to sleep. The next day was perfectly fine. I spent most of the time inside, relaxing, and watching more movies and shows. By the evening, though, that feeling started to creep up again. It was like there was someone there, even though I knew I was alone. I checked all the doors and windows throughout the house to make sure they were locked, and everything looked fine. I even walked around the yard to see if anyone was hiding outside. I didn't find anything. By the time the third night rolled around, I was starting to get jumpy. I woke up again sometime between 2 and 3 a.m. and could hear footsteps outside. They weren't too loud, just faint footsteps, like someone walking on the gravel path. My heart started to race, but I convinced myself it was probably just an animal, maybe a raccoon or something. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I couldn't fall back asleep this time. I grabbed my shoes and a flashlight and went outside to check things out and ease my mind. I walked around the house, shining the flashlight everywhere, but there was nothing to see. I started to feel stupid for going outside alone in the middle of the night. That's when I began to hear something coming from the woods behind our home. It was faint, but it sounded like branches snapping, as if something was moving through the trees. For some reason, I walked toward the sound. As I got about halfway from my house to the edge of the woods, I heard a loud, blood-curdling scream. I don't know if it was from a person or an animal. It's a wild area behind my house, so it could have been a mountain lion or something. Either way, I freaked out, ran inside, and locked all the doors and windows. I peered through the curtains, trying to see if I could spot anything or anyone outside. As I opened the curtains to one of the windows, I was shocked to see a man standing right there, staring directly at me. As soon as he realized I had seen him, he turned around and sprinted toward the woods. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I stayed up and watched more movies. Thankfully, nothing else happened. When my parents came back the next day, I didn't tell them what happened. Since then, I've been home alone 5 more times and have never seen that strange man again. I don't know what he was doing or if the scream I heard was related to him. Maybe it was just a coincidence and an animal, but it was certainly scary. This happened about 6 months ago while I was in my room getting ready for bed. It was around 10:30 p.m. and my curtains were closed, so I couldn't see outside. As I was putting my things away, I suddenly heard 3 loud knocks on my window. The sound was sharp and clear, as if someone was standing right outside. My heart immediately began to race, and I froze for a moment, too scared to move. A few seconds later, when my survival instincts kicked in, I bolted out of my room and ran straight to my dad. I could barely explain what had happened because I was so shaken. I live with my parents and 2 brothers in a pretty busy neighborhood, so hearing noises at night is normal. But this knock was totally different. It was right up against my window, like someone wanted me to notice it. The weird thing is, my bedroom faces the back of the house, not the front or the road. For someone to knock on my window, they would have had to enter our backyard. I asked my dad to check it out. He opened the curtains, but no one was there. He even went outside to look, but the backyard was empty, with no signs of anyone having been there. I closed my curtains and tried to forget about it, telling myself it was just my imagination or maybe an animal. I didn't want to overthink it, so I went to bed, still feeling uneasy. The next night, almost at exactly the same time, I heard 3 knocks on my window again. The sound was the same, clear and deliberate, like someone trying to get my attention. My stomach dropped, and I didn't waste any time. I ran straight to my dad. He came to my room and checked again. He opened the curtains, looked outside, and went into the backyard with a flashlight. But just like before, there were no signs anyone had been there. This time, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I was too scared to stay in my room, so I grabbed a blanket and pillow and slept on the floor in my parents' room for the next few nights. Nothing happened. About a week later, I was home alone around 8:30 or 9 p.m. I was on FaceTime with a friend when I heard those 3 knocks on my window again. Panicked, I ran to my parents' room to call them, but they were out of town. They told me to ask the neighbors to check. I called the neighbors, but they didn't see anything outside either. The next night, around 1 a.m., I woke up to the sound of knocking once more. This time, it wasn't just 3 little knocks. It was a prolonged, steady, and deliberate noise that pulled me out of a deep sleep. For a moment, I thought about pulling back the curtain to see who was out there, but fear held me back. I got up and went to my parents' room. By this point, they were tired of the whole thing and brushed it off as nothing. Over the next few nights, the knocking kept happening. It wasn't every single night, but it was frequent enough that I could no longer relax in my room. My parents decided to let me move to a different bedroom. They turned the office into my new room, hoping the knocking would stop. At first, it worked. For about 4 nights, everything was quiet, and I started to feel better. Then, I heard it again, the same 3 loud knocks, just like before. This time, I was so annoyed that I decided to open the curtains and see what was going on. As I threw them open, I saw someone crouching down outside. I couldn't tell if they were a man or a strong woman. They were wearing a gray hoodie and dark jeans. I slowly closed the curtains and ran to tell my parents everything. They listened carefully, and we decided to call the police. When the police came, they checked around the property but didn't find anyone. Since there was no solid proof beyond my description, there wasn't much they could do. They suggested we install cameras around the house, especially near my bedroom window, to monitor the area in case it happened again. The next day, we set up a security camera pointing toward my window and added a few more around the house. Thankfully, it hasn't happened again since then. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.